Hey everybody, thank you for watching True Crime Time. Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about somebody who's going to be very key when the trial starts for the prosecution, and somebody that I think we're going to see a lot of as we watch the Bryan Kohberger trial. So Detective Mowery is the person that we've been reading about in a lot of these redacted warrants that were released. He's pretty much the lead investigator in the digital forensics of this case. I was thinking about the upcoming trial and the fact that they're going to have experts testifying about this digital evidence that they recovered, and they're not going to just be able to tell them the evidence that they have and say, here it is, it's valid. They're going to have to explain exactly how they uncovered that evidence. They're going to have to prove that that evidence is undeniable. You can't just get up there and talk about this very complex process that law enforcement uses to dig up this digital evidence and expect a normal jury to really understand what all that means. It's very important that they are able to explain that to the jury so that they can understand it, and it helps validate that evidence that they have. It's very similar to that David Westerfield case that I've mentioned, where they had the bug experts. They had to explain that science behind how the bugs evolved on a decomposing body, and they had to educate the jury on how it all worked. So now that we know who the person is that's going to be pretty much leading the charge in getting Bryan prosecuted, aside from the DNA and that type of evidence, but when we're talking about the digital forensics here, Detective Mowery is going to be the guy who's going to have to get up on that stand and explain to the jury how they recovered the evidence and why that evidence matters. I wanted to know how sharp this person was. What's his experience? How good is he? He's going to be going up against a very strong defense team here in this case, and so I want to know, is there something to be concerned about here when he gets up on the stand? So I looked into Detective Mowery a little bit, and I want to share with you what I found, and then I want to share with you an interesting connection that came up in that process that might explain why Bryan may have been in Montana. Remember, in the warrant, they said that they seized a note from Bryan from Montana. When I had read that, I wondered, what was Bryan doing in Montana? So I found this about Detective Mowery. He was the recipient of the 2019 Magnet Forensic Scholarship Award. So he was selected for a program that will train him on a specific program that law enforcement uses in order to investigate digital crime. It's called Magnet Axiom. I'm going to tell you more about what Magnet Axiom is and how it works in just a bit, but first let's read a little bit more about Detective Mowery in order to see if we can find some insights about his background and the kind of person that we have behind the scenes working on this case. And I'm not going to lie, everybody, I am a little bit nervous here when I look at Detective Mowery's background, because he does not have a lot of experience when we talk about time-wise and years working in digital forensics. He does have time working in law enforcement, but he's relatively new to being this deep in digital forensics. Detective Mowery began his law enforcement career as a detention deputy in 2010, and then he was a patrol officer with the Lewiston Police Department in 2012. He was a field training officer and a breath test specialist. And then when he was the recipient of this award, he was a post-certified emergency vehicle operations course instructor for the state of Idaho, and had recently become a new member of the Latah County Regional SWAT team. So from 2010 until 2019, Detective Mowery really didn't work in digital forensics in any way. And then all of a sudden in 2019, he decided to start pursuing this specific field in law enforcement, and he started doing some self-learning and following webinars and doing whatever he could to kind of start learning about digital forensics and shifting his career focus into that area. Now, in his interview, he did mention that he had some experience working for a small internet service provider, working with networks and servers, and then he had graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and religion, but during his enrollment, he had to complete a few courses in computer forensics. So everybody, we don't have this kind of seasoned veteran here leading the charge in the digital forensics aspects of this case, but Digital forensics is relatively new. I don't know if 2019 would be considered new. It's been around longer than that. So he's really just kind of delving into this field in 2019. So at the maximum at trial, he's going to have 4 or 5 years experience working in digital forensics. Now, the good thing about this program that he was accepted into is it specifically focuses on not only teaching them how to use this software to gather evidence and process digital evidence, but it also teaches them how to explain it to a jury, because the evidence won't necessarily have the same impact if the jury doesn't understand what that evidence really is. So Magnet Axiom is the software that they're going to be using to investigate Bryan, and Detective Mowery is the person who's trained on how to use this software and can explain it effectively in court. Now, it didn't take him long, and he was already involved in a high-profile case just before this one in Moscow.
On April 19th, former Christchurch deacon Alex Lloyd was indicted in federal court for possession of child pornography on his iPhone. Lloyd was discovered to have been in possession of images of a prepubescent minor engaging in sexually explicit conduct. Title 18 of the U.S. Code defining that as a child under the age of 12. The investigation, led by forensic detective Lawrence Mowery with Moscow police, alleges that Lloyd was in possession of the material from March of 2021 through January of this year. Lloyd pleading not guilty in U.S. District Court.
There's a lot more going on in Moscow, everybody, than we're aware of. They kind of talk about it as this quiet little town where there's no crime that occurs, but there's quite a bit of crime that happens in Moscow. Now, this case is significant because the suspect had actually tried to dispose of some of the digital evidence, and Detective Mowery was able to still recover it. So he does have success in this role under his belt, and who knows, maybe he's in his prime right now and he's just the right person to be leading this charge against Bryan. So I wanted to share with you more about Magnet Axiom because this will be really helpful during the trial when they're actually talking about this exact software. So here is what applies in this case. It's the warrant return analysis in Magnet Axiom. So for anyone who gets returns from warrants, return content from ISPs, searching and analyzing that content can be problematic. The returns are not in a standard format, and there's a vast number of artifacts, pieces of evidence, lines of information to go through. And those formats can change and typically come in different zip files, different HTML, text, all kinds of different files that can be saved in order to try to be hidden on people's hard drives in different places. And so in addition to having a variety of file types, the files can be nested in folder structures and multiple archives. So how do they, quickly dig through all of this evidence and find the important, relevant evidence? And how do they kind of build a timeline out of it? How do they coordinate it with existing data that you have from other sources? So you can take a cell phone ping, for example, and you can take maybe a login on a certain device, and you can tie those things together using this software. So you have to be able to analyze all of that data effectively, and that's what this software does for law enforcement. So Magnet Axiom is kind of like its own company. They've developed this system, and they work with law enforcement, and they train them on how to use this software in order to investigate cases. So we don't have a detective in a room somewhere, looking at Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and video surveillance and trying to kind of piece it all together. They have software that will do this for them. And we can see here it's specifically designed for companies like Apple, Facebook, Google, Snapchat, Instagram. These are all applications that we've been talking about during this entire case. So this is perfect for what they need to investigate this case. So I'm going to play a quick video for you that will really explain this a little bit better. And then I'm going to show you that connection that I was talking about to the warrants in Pennsylvania. This video is going to show you how they can take information from Instagram and process it using Magnet Axiom.
Hey everyone, Tara Melton here with Magnet Forensics. Today we're talking about Instagram warrant returns, so I will be showing you how to process and analyze that data within your examination. At the time of this video, in Axiom version 3.10, we currently support the processing of Apple, Facebook, Google, Instagram, and Snapchat warrant returns. There are tons of benefits for law enforcement examiners to process this data in Axiom. It makes it really easy to access the available data as artifacts within your case, alongside other evidence sources that you might have. Alright, so I'm in Axiom Process with my case details already filled out. I'm going to go over to Evidence Sources, and I'll choose Cloud, and then Load Evidence, and then Instagram. Once you click on Warrant Returns, all you need to do is point to the zip file that contains the warrant return information, and it will be added as an evidence source in your case. Now, if you would like, you can add and process additional evidence sources, if you have any, and run additional processes against this data, such as Magnet AI or keyword searching. I'm going to switch over to Axiom Examine so we can see what this data looks like. Under the Cloud category, you can see we have specific artifacts dedicated to parsing this information for you. In this sample, you'll see account actions, direct shares, and photos. But you may also get additional information in your Instagram warrant return data, such as comments or stories or followers. My colleague here at Magnet, Jessica Hyde, actually wrote a blog detailing the data that you might see in your Instagram warrant return, so I encourage you to check that out in our resource center on magnetforensics.com. Reviewing this data in Axiom has many benefits, like I said. For example, it's super easy to review chat data from your warrant return. So I'm going to switch to Conversation View, and you can see that these chat records, once they load, they're now going to be threaded together for really simple review. And you can also have this nice visual chat bubbles over here in the preview. Also, as I mentioned before, if you have additional evidence sources loaded in, like a hard drive or a mobile device, you can analyze them all together using features in Axiom like connections or timeline. So just as an example, I'm going to apply a relative time filter on this timestamp associated with this chat record. I'm just going to give it a 3-minute time range before and after. And I'll switch over to timeline view, and you can immediately see that we're able to correlate and analyze timestamp data from both an iOS device that's loaded in my case, as well as data from the Instagram warrant return. Finally, I want to note that we're able to add this warrant return data support in Axiom because of our amazing customers who have been able to share data with us to build these features. So thank you to those who have shared. Again, we know these returns can contain sensitive data, so if you're able to share any redacted warrant returns, we would really appreciate it and would of course keep it confidential. This allows us to continue to be able to parse warrant return data so that you can review and analyze information easily in your Axiom cases. We hope you see the benefit of analyzing your Instagram warrant return data in Axiom, and we hope you utilize these features in your casework. Thanks for watching.
So everybody, they're going to be taking all of this data from all of these different apps, all of this other evidence they have even from outside of the apps, and they're going to be inputting it into this program, and it's going to build out to them all of the different connections that it can find. So this got me thinking, here we have a pretty cutting edge technology, and we have a position at the Moscow Police Department that had been recently filled with a detective who is focusing on digital forensic and using this software. And this is very similar to what Bryan was pursuing for his career. So I was wondering, could Bryan have been learning about Magnet Axiom when he was attending WSU? To be honest, I initially just thought it would be kind of ironic if he was learning about the very software that they're using to prosecute him. So I just went over to the WSU website and I went to their criminology department and I searched their web directory and I typed in Magnet Axiom, and you can see here right at the top of the list there is something that comes up. It says, what is Magnet Axiom? Axiom is the primary tool that we're going to use for forensic analysis. And not only the analysis of the data, but it goes into talking about, without good reporting, great forensic work will go unnoticed. So the findings from the investigation must be reported in a manner which satisfies the context of the investigation. So they train them on not only gathering and processing the evidence, but how to present it and communicate it in court. And this presentation goes on to explain how Axiom works, and it's kind of a training slide for somebody who's going to probably be learning how to use this software. But as you can see, you've probably been noticing it already, you can see that this comes from Montana State University. Remember, this is from the WSU website, but this presentation, for whatever reason, comes up under Montana State University. So when I saw Montana on here, it made me think about the note that was listed on the warrant, the note from Bryan from Montana, and I was thinking, what would Bryan be doing in Montana? And after coming across this, I wonder, was Bryan maybe in Montana to attend a training seminar about magnet axiom as part of his studies? Everybody, could Bryan have been studying to learn the exact software that they're going to be using to prosecute him in this case? What will Bryan be thinking as he looks up at Detective Mowery testifying on the stand and explaining to the jury how magnet axiom works? How hard is it going to be for Bryan to keep his mouth shut and not try to correct him that he's wrong? Because as you know, Bryan was a very strict grader. How many times will the prosecution object, or what will the cross-examination be like after Bryan gets to hear Detective Mowery's testimony and then pick it apart and communicate what he knows about magnet axiom to Ann Taylor and the defense team? Everyone, I've said it before, I think this is going to be a groundbreaking case when it comes to digital forensics. Everybody, thank you for watching. Please hit the like button. That helps more people see the video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. My next video will be out very soon and you don't want to miss it.